I would pray for Dad to come back to the church.
How can he not believe anymore? He's breaking his promise to me, to God.
I would say, please, please, please bless that Daddy will come back to the church.
What happens if I don't believe anymore? Is she still going to love me the way I am?
But now I kind of feel like me and him have a better connection now that he's not in the church.
I wish this wasn't happening.
All right, are we ready?
Sure.
Well, I normally start the podcast by saying welcome to Unequally Yoked, so we'll start there. Welcome to Unequally Yoked. I am Neil Winters.
And I'm Naomi.
And who do we have on the line?
My name's Tom.
My name's Kristina.
Welcome.
Oh, well, thanks for having us. We aren't your first guests, are we?
Yes.
Oh, my gosh. I'm so nervous.
That's what will happen.
Okay.
And we were your guest on an episode of Infants on Thrones that just released today.
Yeah, that's right.
Did?
Congratulations.
Yeah.
And have we got any downloads on that? Have you been following meticulously?
No, actually, I haven't. But, well, I don't know if you want to leave this in. You can if you want. But the guys actually did like another Sing parody sort of thing, Disney songs that they wanted to do because of the whole policy thing. So they spent the weekend putting this all together, and they started begging me to postpone that episode that we did with you guys so they could put out this singing one. And I said no. and so all the guys are like, well, I want to see the numbers for the Unequally Yoked, because if they're not great, I'm going to do I Told You So. We should have went with the singing one. And they've been run of the mill. They've been average. So I think we've got at least, well, this was 2 or 3 hours ago. We had at least 2,000 unique downloads.
Wow.
Just for the first few hours. So
should have been more careful about what I said.
Yeah, we've had 1,200 downloads total for the whole length of the episode, at least through yesterday. So
serious. That's actually not bad. I mean, you guys only have, was it 6 or 7, maybe 8? How many do you have?
7. We released 8. 8's supposed to release today. I still haven't edited it. So anyway, so
that's really good though. Actually, you're gaining momentum. I saw you're over 100 likes on Facebook. That's good.
Yeah,
you guys are doing good.
Yeah, I had a buddy who has quite a following who put us out there. So
I like that guy.
Yeah, he and I and another buddy went to NASCAR race in March. So yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Cool.
Yeah. So anyway, so let's start talking about you guys. Yeah. You heard about us in our interview with you. So what's your story? How's that for a nice opening?
You want us to just
what's your deal?
Just go. Yeah. What makes you up? Well, I grew up, for all intents and purposes, primarily in Utah County. Really, I spent my childhood in Payson, which is southern Utah County.
Yeah.
And then I served my mission in Peoria, Illinois. So I pretty much stayed in the States my entire life. I mean, the only time that I've left was on our honeymoon.
And your mission?
My mission was Peoria.
Yeah, you left Utah then.
Well, I left Utah, but not America.
No.
I wanted to.
Are you sure outside Utah isn't outside America?
Yeah, that's true. That is so true. That is so true.
Sometimes it is.
Outside of Utah is inside America, but
it's a different planet when you leave.
All right, so because you grew up all over.
I grew up to about 13 in Salt Lake County area. My dad moved our family to Chicago area. We lived there for about 4 years.
And you met
maybe 5.
Tom was on his mission?
No, never met him actually. Then we moved. Then my dad moved our family to Texas. Lived there till I graduated in high school, and then I moved back to Utah, back up to the Salt Lake area. Lived with my grandpa for a few years, and then when my family moved back up to Payson, I moved back in with them, and and then his neighbor and I worked at the same place, and she invited me to a back to school party. She's getting ready to go back to school up north, and went just so I could meet some other people in the area that were my age, and met Tom then, and found out later that I also worked with his brother and his sister. So,
wow.
Eventually we met. Our paths crossed a bunch. We finally went on a date just a couple days after Christmas, and then
our meet story was. It's weird.
It's weird.
Yeah, it was that. But we were back to school meeting or party that we did, and then we didn't go out, or we didn't really connect until 2 or 3 months after that.
Yeah.
And then I got the guts to finally call you because you gave my brother, said, "Hey, give this to your brother."
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I didn't call you until Christmas. It was Christmas Day.
Yeah.
And anyway.
So
our first date was New Year's. So
did you follow the Mormon prescription, pray about it? And I mean, who knew first?
I would have to say she did. Because we started dating, like I said, our first date was New Year's Eve, and we got engaged.
No, we went out before we went out on New Year's Eve because we went out for pizza, and then we went out on New Year's Eve.
Okay. So New Year's was like the second date?
Yeah.
That's when we went out with friends. Anyway, okay. Then we got engaged right around Valentine's Day. So what is that? Not even 2 months?
That's slow for us.
Like your relationship is around holidays then. You just...
Yeah, kind of. And
milestones.
Then we were engaged and we got married in May.
So
around Royal Day.
So 5 months from meeting to engagement.
Yeah, and I remember when we were first dating, there was one particular meeting that when I was down at your house, and we were just hanging out or something like that, and then she comes and grabs me or whatever and starts to hug me, and then she she whispers in my ear, she says, "You better not break my heart."
Aww.
And there was something else. I can't remember if you said you better marry me or when are we going to get married.
I don't remember.
Something like that. And I remember leaving there like, holy freaking crap, no pressure. So because it was right after that I spent a couple, times alone going to the temple and, like you said, praying to try to find out if she was the right one or not. And I went through one session in the temple, and I just remember sitting in this celestial room saying, "Okay, so, hello, anyone?" And then I just kind of came to the conclusion, like, we like her a lot. There's no signals, no, so it's a yes, right? So that's kind of how it went for me.
And how did you know Kristina?
I didn't think my world would revolve without him.
Aww.
The funny thing is, our relationship consisted mainly over our dates for phone calls on his break at work because he worked a graveyard at work, and I was going to school and then working. So he either would catch on his way to work, he'd come and bring me lunch, and so I'd take a break and have lunch with him, and then he'd go to work, and then later that night on his break, I'd have a phone call talk with him. So most of our dating or courtship were phone calls. And then on the occasional that we had the weekend or a day off together, we would spend some time together.
You can get to know a person really well on the phone, though.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And we really did try to spend as much possible time together. So,
yeah. Wow. Where was I going to?
Well, we got to get into when he started questioning the church.
Yeah.
That's the next.
Yeah, I had a follow-up question, but I don't remember what it was.
Yeah.
You guys are like, you're in the studio with professionals right now, just in case you were wondering.
Well, I never even doubted that. Absolutely.
Kristina, you told Tom, "Don't break my heart," or, "Don't let me down." Has he let you down since then?
Jeez.
No.
Should I leave for this?
No,
right.
he hasn't.
Okay.
He hasn't. We've had our ups and downs, but he hasn't let me down, and he hasn't broken my heart.
Oh, that's good. Now, where I was going with that is, Tom, you are no longer a believer in the LDS religion.
That's affirmative.
And neither am I. But
Tom, do you believe in any religion? Like, are you affiliated with anything?
I'm not.
Are you atheist?
Yeah, I classify myself as agnostic,
Okay.
maybe deist. I do think that there's something out there that got the ball rolling,
Right.
and then is a non-intervening. That's kind of where I classify myself.
All right.
And Kristina, where do you classify yourself right now?
LDS Mormon person who's
Still believes.
There's just some things in my life I can't turn my back on, and that's why I believe in the LDS religion, because it's just part of things that have happened in my life that I cannot not say. Like when we talked last time, I said, my husband mentioned there's a time I didn't believe. I said God can't exist if he's actually thinking these things are going on. But there's certain things that have happened in my life growing up that I can't not say there's not a God, and I can't not say that the LDS religion is not true.
Okay.
So
She also, is it fair that you're pretty nuanced, because there are some things like, I don't know if you guys listened to the coffee episode, but you take a pretty nuanced view to even like the word of wisdom, where you're like, coffee's not that big a deal.
Yeah, I'm not hardcore, and I don't pick and choose, but I am not. There are people that are over anal, and that's not me. I just have a level head about how I see things, and
pretty lenient.
And a lot of it has to do with things that have come up in my life growing up of how I approach things. And
so how did you guys, word of wisdom is an interesting topic to me. I mean, I listened to your coffee episode where Kristina bought Tom the coffee maker, and Tom, you wanted it to be, you thought you were going to be a man and sprout hairs on your chest by drinking blood.
Hey, let's turn the video on. I can show you. Just kidding.
I'm curious how the word of wisdom transition took place for you. Naomi, when she bought, or when I first started leaving, word of wisdom was a non-negotiable, ain't going to happen. And then it just
not in the house.
Not in the house.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of gradually, well, you didn't want me to drink coffee at all or anything. And it gradually got to the point where we've got a coffee maker in the house and I have beer in the house. And so I'm curious if you guys were overnight, if it was hard for you, Kristina, to adjust.
Well, how did it? So like in the coffee episode, we talked a little bit about this where, I mean, I have zero interest in alcohol. But coffee's always been this thing, like my entire life. Like I talk about my grandfather used to drink it. So every time we'd go to visit, there was that aroma. And I'm like, what is that? That is awesome. And you'd go to gas stations or supermarkets and I could always smell it. And it always felt like this forbidden exotic smell. And I was like, oh, it was just pulling me in every time. And then slowly but surely I started to, I don't know, test the waters a little bit by trying like coffee flavored candies and whatnot. And then, I don't know, it was after my crisis that I finally got the gumption to talk to you about wanting to try it.
Yeah. And I told him if he wanted to try it, I'd be willing to help him with it. So I bought him a coffee machine. Yeah. Like, if you want to try it, let's get a coffee maker and we'll mix you up a cup and go for at it. And he's like, you know how to make that? I'm like, I grew up making coffee where I worked. I think I can handle a coffee maker. So
yeah, and I think part of her actually knew that coffee didn't taste good, so that's why she was encouraging it, because she's like, no, you really want to try? Oh, that's fine, that's cool. And I'm over here, nervous. My hands are getting sweaty. I'm like, she's really gonna let me do this. This is gonna be awesome. And then, she just watched me as I took my first taste or whatever, and I was like, I think you did it wrong, because it didn't taste good.
Did you laugh at him?
Oh, I laughed because
she laughed hard.
I don't like the smell of it. My dad did the Mormon coffee, the Postum or whatever it is.
Yeah, Postum.
Just can't stand the smell of it. I would go to my dad to his work and they had their coffee stuff set up there and people would drink it. But I was little, like 8 or 9 years old, and I always watched them mix all this stuff in their coffees to drink it. And then when I started working in different little fast food places that, you'd make the coffee and maybe one out of like 80 people I gave a cup to drank it straight. And everyone's like, yeah, I need some creamer. Can you hand me like a handful of that stuff? I need some sugar. So knowing, like, just experience watching people, knowing that he wanted to try, I'm like, here you go.
Here you go.
Go for it. And I kept asking, do you want some milk? Do you want some sugar? Do you want something?
Yeah, and because
I stole some creamer packets from the car shop after they did the I was there for 7 hours waiting to have my oil changed and something. Oh, and they're trying to figure out why.
That's right. You had those little little things.
So
but we also went and bought some too.
Yeah, but I had some hot chocolate with my little one, and we didn't know what creamer we wanted, so she grabbed a handful and stuck in my purse. I'm like, I've got some of these. Do you want any of this?
And I was
no.
I was bound and determined. Like, no, real men drink black. That's all I knew. That's how pop culture had pretty much brainwashed me. But if I drink something with sugar and creamer in it, I'm giving away my man card freely. That doesn't sound. My wife will go around saying I'm in a lesbian relationship because my husband puts creamer in his coffee.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. So yeah, I wonder how I would have reacted if you would have come to me, Neil. Like, there was still this secrecy. It was that you were doing it behind my back, and no, I'm not, like, lying. Like, if you would have come and said, hey, I want to try this, I think I would have been a little bit more like that. I want to believe I would. Let's pretend that I'm as cool as Kristina.
Well, I think there based on our conversation last time and today, there seems to be a pretty drastic difference between the way Tom has handled his disaffection and the way I handled mine. I took the route of deceit and not telling the truth, whereas Tom, it sounds like you've been pretty straight up with everybody. And how did that work for you?
Well, I can't say I've been fully straight up with everybody.
There is the creamer. Fully straight.
Right.
Oh my God.
No, but I went through waves, like how my level of disaffection would change. Sometimes I would de-escalate on my testimony much more than I was projecting or at least communicating to my wife. And sometimes she'd be like, okay, so where are you at this week? Or where are you at this month? And I'd be like, oh yeah, I guess I haven't talked to you about where I'm at now. So it'd be like one of those, I don't know, I'm thinking of a roller coaster that's going up and down. That's what it would feel like, trying to help her catch her up with it. And sometimes where I felt like I was either headed or where I was at was actually scary for me. Like, I remember my de-escalation, or when I was really breaking down the Bible and Christianity and that stuff, that was super, super scary for me. Because that, giving up on I don't know, Mormonism felt very difficult, but giving up on Christ, that was a totally different deal to me. That was really, really hard. And in a lot of ways, I haven't completely unplugged that. Some of it still lingers, and I'm okay with it. But when I was diving into that, I didn't completely keep her lockstep. And originally, when everything was going down, I communicated. I sent like this mass email to my family and some of my friends that had all the pages and pages of research, like check my footnotes or whatever. And there was only 3 or 4 people that said they even read it. Most of them just ignored it. And then I kind of did the whole, the tour of disaffection, where you go around to your family and friends and you start to talk to them about it, and you're like, hey, just in case you're wondering, I no longer believe, so this is awkward. How about them Cowboys? So that's pretty much how it went for me, and it was super, super uncomfortable, super shocking. My parents didn't handle it well at all. Her parents
were in denial. They didn't really. They weren't listening. What is it when you're talking to someone, you're trying to tell them what's going on, but they're really not listening. They're
not wanting to.
Not wanting to hear it, so they think that they have the solution, the Band-Aids for everything, but they're really not getting everything you're telling them.
Yeah, because I remember telling her dad, like, no, I don't subscribe to this, and he's like, no, just give it time. Just give it time. You'll come around. Don't worry about it. You're in our prayers. When I put you on the prayer roll in the temple, you'll be fine.
And I think
I was like, okay.
And I think some of it's because
so.
my dad has gone through his own ups and downs with stuff, but to the point where disaffecting or whatever is not something he would do because, yeah, it's just my dad that being LDS is where it's at, and he just takes whenever he starts tanking, he takes the ultimate high road. So he doesn't want to deal with what actually is bothering him.
And then with my sister, who's closest to me in age, me and her have always been really close, and I talked to her about it, and she seemed to take it fairly well at first, and then started to backpedal. And one part of my problem is I was kind of living out loud a little bit on the podcast. One of my interviews, I don't remember. I think there's 2 interviews. One of the later ones, I think, my mom and my sister actually listened to, and that pissed them off. And my sister actually approached me and said, "Do you really feel that way?" And so we kind of had to have a conversation that way. And my mom took me on a road trip, and she's like, "Hey, I need your help. I'm gonna go out to visit your grandmother and blah blah blah." I'm like, "Oh, that's awesome." And so I had to take time off work for it, and then we get in the car, and then she just breaks down. She's like, "I just got to be honest. We're not really going anywhere for any purpose. I just needed to talk to you."
Oh,
and then
man.
she just unloaded. I mean, lots of tears shed on both sides, but
it's tough.
Yeah. So I kind of had to backpedal to some degree with my parents. Like my parents don't know the level that I'm at right now. Especially my dad. My mom has a taste of it, but my dad, no. Because every time when I first originally came out, it was just too much for him. And he was sick at the time. He had went through a really ugly case of pneumonia where we almost lost him. And I was in the hospital room with him when they finally pulled the breathing tube and all that stuff out of him. My mom was there. And they're waking him up, and I'm holding his hand, and he looks at me, and like the first thing that he utters out of his mouth is if I'm going to church. Because before he went down, it was like when I unloaded all this on him. So then he's in a medically induced coma for, was it 2 weeks?
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
And so my mom, I could just feel this pressure from my mom. Like, can you just not be selfish for just right now? You know, I'm dealing with this. I'm dealing with all this crap with your father right now. You really think that anyone cares about how you feel about the church right now? I'm like, no, you're absolutely right. I'm so sorry. And then when my dad asked me that question, I remember leaving the room and just like going to the bathroom and just falling on my knees and just weeping. Like, why is this happening? Why did I don't know. It felt like my timing was horrid, and it felt like I was being selfish.
Right.
And so I kind of committed to myself that I was just going to back off. I wasn't going to talk to them. I wasn't going to try to put, my quote disbelief into their faces anymore. And then really, really tone it down and just be really cordial, really just to be a good listening ear and a shoulder for my family at that point. And if they want to know where I'm at, they can come and approach me and talk to me, but I'm not going to go to them anymore. So,
do you still take that approach?
Yeah, more or less. My dad, for a while, he started like buying me all these church history books. Like he bought me the Joseph Smith paper books, the hard novels, and he'd like just deliver them to me spontaneously. It didn't even have to be my birthday or anything. He'd just drop them off because I could tell it was like his way of, I don't know, healing me or helping me, or I don't know. But I was always grateful. I mean, it's the thought that matters. He is trying to help me. He is being thoughtful, and that means a lot to me.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I guess, Kristina, how was this process for you?
With
him leaving, like watching that, and I mean, you're obviously part of the experience. What was the hardest part for you?
The hardest part for me has been loss of some friends, people that have seemed to go the other way, close friends telling me that I'm not raising my kids right. one of the hardest struggles were just getting over the fact, realizing that I don't know, look at myself or the reasons why I married Tom and what aspects were important to me. And I ranked those things on a list of what actually was important. And I took the approach as leaving religion off the table. Why I did it, because truthfully, if I had lived anywhere else, there's a time in my life that I possibly would have married somebody else. Would religion have been a big topic for me? Would that have been important? And being raised saying that, if you don't have the same religious belief, it's difficult. So I took that approach saying, okay, if I was back, we'll go back several years. If I met him and I wanted to marry him where he's at now, would religion be a big kicker for me? And I realized it really wasn't. The aspects about him of who he was important to me. And so just having to realize I wasn't alone, because was the biggest thing, is feeling like I realized my husband felt alone where he was at, and I felt alone where I was at, and didn't feel like there's anybody I could talk to. So I kind of took the approach of going back to when we were dating and having phone calls or ways just to talk to each other again.
Can I just say that is so smart? And the whole list thing, like, tell me in your words again, what was the list? You went through and listed all the things, the qualities.
His personality, how he could make me laugh, how he never turned his back on me when I had hard times, how he always stood up for me, that he could make me smile when I felt my worst. He's seen me at my worst more than anybody else has, and he's always been there for me. One time we were dating, I surprised the crap out of him when he was half passed out asleep. And, and the look on his face of just pure love for me, it just, those things and those times meant more to me than anything else. The things that we were able to grow from, and me sharing things with him that were very personal for me that I'd never talked to anybody else about, and that how he took them to heart and to help me find ways to get through my fears of different things. Those things meant a lot to me. Helped me get to the point I am, that I have a home. I work from home, just a little sewing business, and how much support he was for me to get that started. And so if those are things that he can do for me, then I should be able to be supportive of him while he's trying to discover where he's at and what's important to him, and respect what's important to him because he respects what's important to me.
I think one of the things that makes our marriage and our relationship so fortunate is because religion, while it was a big part of who we were and our backgrounds, and we got married in the Salt Lake Temple and all that stuff. I mean, while that was a big deal, it always kind of was in the background a little bit. I know it was different for you guys because, religion is very intertwined in your relationship and how you guys met and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But for us, it didn't play as big of a role. I remember even early on when we were married, it seemed like I was pulling my wife when I was feeling very, energized, zealous, and I was trying to fulfill all my callings and all my responsibilities. Like, there's a couple times we couldn't go to church, and so we ended up having sacrament at home or something like that. And I can't remember all the weird, like, I would go home teaching all the time, and she'd be like, if I don't get my visiting teaching, no big deal. And I was like, are you serious? Freaking God's watching. Do you not look? It's right there. So she was much more nuanced and just kind of like, and I'm over here like, are you serious? My stress and anxiety were always, and guilt always at the forefront of my mind when it came to my beliefs and my religion. Even on my mission, it was so many sleepless nights where I'm just like, okay, God, I know you're like paying attention to all this stuff, but we're serious? You really want me to, like, all this? You want me to obey all these things and get all this stuff done and then be fine with myself at the end of the day? So it was always a struggle, but the big fortunate thing for us is that it didn't play a massive impact role in our relationship.
Yeah, I remember just on mission, the guilt that I would constantly feel. I mean, I remember at least one horrible night where I was just having a meltdown because I wasn't doing enough. And It's not a fun situation to be in for a missionary, I don't think.
You know, they have medication for that.
Well, we've said on the podcast, because I usually, or at least in the past, and I probably still am this way, where I'm a defender of the church in some ways, and I can't stand it when people call it a cult. I don't like that, and I even hate using the brainwashing term in reference to the church. But I can say definitively, for people that are on the mission, that's the most cult-like thing out there. That is church boot camp at its finest. It's a make or break atmosphere for people. And in a lot of ways, I think it broke me in a lot of ways. Like I'm one of those people that deeply regret having gone.
I'm in the same boat. You can't relive your life, but I think I would have been okay had I not gone on my mission.
Yeah. And there was a lot of experiences that I had on my mission that negatively shaped me. I mean, I like to think that I'm smarter and I've grown from those experiences. But it caused a lot of distrust and I don't know. It's still to this day, I think back to that and I just kind of cringe and I'm just like, and I remember when we were married and we started trying to have children, I remember telling her, I'm not sure I want my sons to go on missions, just as a heads up. This was when I was still like full on in my believing, Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I said, I'm not sure I want our daughters to go either. So,
yeah.
I'm totally on board with that feeling and that sentiment. So where were we going?
I don't know, but I want to go back a little bit to Kristina. You mentioned that one of the hard parts was your friends sometimes leaving or feeling like they disapprove of the way you're raising your kids. Do you, on a personal level, find that it's hard to live your beliefs and the religion that is important to you with the influence of your husband's beliefs in the home?
Sometimes it feels like it is, but Tom supports me with what I want. But we also have decided to raise our kids to make sure that they have an open-mindedness, because neither one of us want them to go through what he's gone through.
Yes.
We don't want him to walk with blinders on. Our oldest is very strong-willed, minded.
Very opinionated.
Very opinionated and has no fear telling you how to go fly a kite in which direction. And I admire her for that. And she doesn't deal with any bull crap that she gets dealt out from church leaders, and in some way has turned her off from the church because of their approach to her, because she doesn't stand for someone trying to fill her full of hot air. She just won't put up with it. Yeah,
she does claim to be like a feminist, very independent, and we both love that about her. That she is kind of carving her own path, but she would come home from some young women meetings and whatever, and when they were really pounding into make yourself a worthy young woman for a nice return missionary man so you can marry them and whatever, and all those kinds of messages, she would come home like, is really, Dad, is really the only purpose for me is to just be there for some worthy Mormon guy so that we can be married or whatever? I was like, that's what they're telling you, but I'm telling you no.
Yeah.
I'm telling you that you need to be your own person. You carve your own way, go to college, get a job. You can make an impact and impression on people without fitting that stereotype. Absolutely not. And so that's pretty much the road she's taken.
So what is your goal for both of your goals for your children? Do you have a goal for them to grow up and continue to be LDS Kristina? The opposite for you, Tom? I mean, will you feel like a failure if they choose the other parents' paths?
I want my children to realize that both of us love them, and no matter what choice they make, I hope it's a choice that is best for them. LDS religion is what's best for me. And if my daughter decides that she wants to be agnostic and wants to go that path or go be Scientologist or whatever she feels it works for her, I just want her to be happy with the choices that she makes and that she feels that that's what is best for her. She knows of the LDS religion. She's gone to church on and off occasionally. She doesn't feel that's the best suited for her because she doesn't want to be a cookie cutter Mormon because that's not her. And she doesn't think she can't be herself and be Mormon. Does that sound about right?
No, that sounds right. And she's probably, she's actually told me 2 or 3 times that she wanted to resign from the church. And I've told her, please no.
You're still too young and immature to make a decision of that course right now.
I would be supportive of it, but I kind of want her to hold off just because I don't think she really fully understands the impact and consequences of making that kind of decision will have on our extended family. That was my only reservation on it. Other than that, I'm fully supportive of her. Like when she turns 18 and she still wants to resign or whatever, I'd be okay with that. But with our other kids, I do encourage them to go. Kristina, she likes them to go. And so I encourage them to go, but I also encourage them to not go. So usually it's kind of a 50-50 split is what we try to do. 2 or 3 times a month, sometimes only once a month. It depends. Yeah. My son has backed off because he doesn't like scouting at all. When he turned 11, I actually got involved with the 11-year-old scouting program. I was one of the leaders because my son was there. I'm like, yeah, I'll be supportive and do that. And slowly but surely, he just started backing out of it. And every time I would talk to him, like, hey, so what'd you think about, this? And what'd you think about that? And we even did a camping thing together. And he just hated every minute of it, every single minute of it.
Wow.
And so I finally said, well, if this isn't for him, then what's the point of me staying involved in scouting? So as he slowly left, I turned in all my binders and said, hey, I'm not interested in teaching all these other kid scouts. Sorry. I know I sound pretty selfish that way. It's like my son or nobody. Yeah. But that was kind of my deal. I didn't, because even then I had come out to the ward, or at least the church leaders, the local leaders here, about my disbelief. And they're like, we're here for you. And when my son turned 11, they're like, hey, do you want to be one of the scout leaders? And I was like, my son's there. Yeah, of course. So I don't know if they manipulated me, but it worked.
Well, I did it long enough till he decided he didn't like it. But he goes back and forth. The one thing that when he turned 12, he's not ever gotten the priesthood or the Aaronic priesthood and stuff because he doesn't know if it's for him.
Yeah.
So we've just let it go at that, and let's just needless to say that I guess if I go to church, they don't touch our family with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah.
Because they don't ever follow up. They don't ever come by and check on our teenage kids. Maybe once a year.
Yeah, it's weird. And, as my wife and I talked about, doing this interview, and she mentioned that one of the most difficult things through this whole process was seeing everybody in our ward and our friends. I think you lightly mentioned that earlier, how they all pulled back. So I, for all intents and purposes, quit cold turkey, at least the church initially. But then I slowly started to plug myself back in. But during that period, my wife, bless her soul, was still taking the kids, and there was all kinds of bad things that started happening. I remember, you can share your side of the story, but there was one Sunday where I went, and I can't remember if I was picking them up or dropping them off, or like our youngest to nursery or something like that. And my wife was in the hallway, and the bishop's wife had stopped Kristina, and in the hallway, and Kristina was crying just with everything that was happening. And do you remember what she said? She said, I'd rather hear that my husband died.
Oh, yeah.
Than hear what if my husband was going through what your husband's doing right now, I would have rather have heard my husband die in a car accident or something like that. And I remember hearing that.
Thought she was commiserating, but said something really.
I mean, she was being honest. So there's that.
There's that.
But I remember just being so angry. But a lot of our friends in the ward pulled away.
That is so unfortunate.
Do you still have members that you hang out with, or is it you guys and virtual friends like us?
We do have some friends. A lot of the friends that were in our ward that moved away, we still keep in contact with. Like we had a neighbor that was just north of us. My wife and her were really good friends. And this was all through the crisis too, right?
Yeah.
And when they moved, it wasn't very long after that her husband went through a disaffection, and then you and her became even closer. Started calling each other all the time.
Yeah, we keep on. I mean, when things were going on, she even came over because she's a physical therapist. She came over to check on my husband after he crashed on his bike. She came
She's awesome.
To harass him and to make sure he was okay. He didn't need any more.
Yeah,
he needed to actually go to the hospital because he wouldn't let me take him. But but she was a friend, and she was like the only friend that I could talk to about anything. And they lived next door to us, and then they were just renting, and then they moved a house and they moved a little bit further away. But we still we did stuff together on and off quite a bit. And then when her babies were born, I helped her out a little bit on and off, and then they moved out of state. So we keep in contact a little bit. And she called me recently and said, like, I get it. I was not the best crazy lady to live next to, just being married, and you're like a mom with kids, and you still did so much to help me. How in the world did you do it? I said, and then throw in that our husbands are going spiraling out of control. She's like, I know. But it was just something, like you see, because you feel alone. Like I mentioned, like I knew my husband felt alone with what he was going through. I felt alone because I didn't think anybody knew what I was going through. And I really couldn't talk to my family. And I thought at the time, especially my parents. I've learned later I've got a couple sisters I can talk to.
Yeah.
And then started hearing of other friends that I actually could talk to that I'm like, you know what? It's just, I don't need to be focused on having ward friends because they were all the center of gossip, because there was one chain that got back to us while we were at church. I was talking to a friend in the hallway. It could have even been Paul. Anyways,
oh, yeah. Okay.
They were asking me how Tom was doing, and I was mentioning something to him. And this passerby who I didn't even know took it upon herself to go share it with like 6 other people. Do you remember this? And it got all the way back to someone you worked with.
Oh, yeah. But it was about me.
About you, and then she'd spun it so much to make it sound like you were committing adultery on me. Yeah. And that's why you got kicked out of being on the high council.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not immune to those gossipy telephone kind of things where they said that I was obviously sinning. That's why I wanted to leave.
What did that do to your feeling of self-worth for both of you? I mean, you feel, for me, I feel alone, and my feelings of my positive feelings about myself go down. Like, how has that impacted your self-worth, and how do you work through that?
Well, it does take a toll. I'll say that. Because I wanted to say originally it doesn't have an effect at all. That's what I wanted to say, but I won't lie. It does. It takes a toll. There were some days where it got really, really ugly. In fact, one of my coworkers lived in my ward for a while, and he came up to me and would just be like, I don't know what happened, Tom. I mean, you were the elders quorum president. You were on the high council. It's just a shame, really. It's just a shame. And I was like, a shame what? What are you talking? What? And then he was just, shaking his head in disgust and would walk away. And,
wow.
And I remember thinking, how dare you? But at the same time, I'm like, he doesn't know me. I mean, he never, even when I was in the ward, he never came and like offered a hand of friendship and nothing. And so, I mean, I'd heard lots of bad things about this guy anyways. Wasn't a fan at all.
Right.
And so when I would go home, sometimes I'd get a chip on my shoulder and I'd be trying to prove to myself and everybody else that I was actually a good guy. But I didn't have to work too hard because I really do feel like I'm a good person. You know, from start to finish, I work really hard at being charitable, being honest and kind, always. And that's never changed. Crisis before crisis, after crisis. I still will go help people move. There was a move that happened. They moved in, remember, in our ward. I want to say their name, but I don't want to make you cut it out. They are in our ward, but they moved to another boundary in the ward, over to the cul-de-sac over here.
Oh, yeah.
And I had heard that they were moving, so I just showed up to help them move. And they were all like, "What are you doing here?" Like, "What do you mean, what am I doing here? Freaking, this is my neighborhood. I love you guys." I don't know. Is that too weird to ask? Is it just too? I mean, I have the ability to be here. Why is it weird that I'm here? I mean, I don't understand. Like, if I stop attending and I stop believing, then I'm supposed to stop associating with everybody. I've never really understood that. And anyway,
I am so saddened to hear all of that. You guys live in Utah still, right?
Yeah, Orem, yeah.
Is it Utah County?
Yeah, Orem.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, I don't get that. I have other people in my ward who are in similar situations as I am.
Here in North Carolina.
I have people who are converts, so their spouse, doesn't believe and isn't happy that they're coming. I don't know. They just really seem to be like a come as you are and let's care about each other. And today when we were talking about, the 90 and 9, leaving the 90 and 9 to follow the one and find them when they're struggling. We were talking about how sometimes you're that, yes, the Savior does that for us, but sometimes we're asked to be that person. And a lady was like, I think sometimes people worry and think that it has to be only within the gospel. When we say love people, it's not just love them back into the church. That shouldn't be our goal. It's not about that. It's about caring about people. And I am so sad that you guys don't have that.
Yeah,
I want to go and personally beat them up and toilet paper their house. I'm so upset.
Well, I'll send you their address later.
Okay.
No, it has been hard.
That's not even what our gospel is about. They're not living it.
But that's what the culture is.
But that's what the culture is.
Especially in very highly concentrated sections of the community in Utah.
So frustrating.
Well, it is. And it's whether it's intentional or not, I don't know. But it does create an us versus them mentality. Like we have a neighbor that's just a side of us, and they don't, as far as I know, they're not members. And they've never been contacted by anybody in the church. But they couldn't be more kind. They're just great people, just awesome people, actually. They always come over. They always offer to come help me out when I'm working on a car or something like that. They're really, really cool. And I'm like, that's just a shame. It's just a shame that they're not getting to know them or vice versa. And it's not convenient
because they're not on the ward list. They're not assigned to visit teach.
Well, I mean, just to give you an illustration, the best quote from a Sunday school lesson that I can remember, and this is being sarcastic, by the way, we had a lady raise her hand and say, "I am so grateful to have members live around me. We don't have one house in our circle that doesn't have a member in it, so I can call any one of our neighbors at any time for a priesthood blessing."
I was like, what?
That's right out of the Utah Mormon Handbook, man.
Wow.
Yeah, I was, and this was when I was starting to question, and that felt like a box of rocks. So,
well, there was one experience, talking about people shunning or ostracizing us or whatever. it was because I was on the High Council when I went cold turkey, and I had asked to stop and had some interaction with my stake president at the time. He's no longer our stake president, but he started off being really cool, handling it, and then it's quickly changed. And there's a story that my wife shares about this, and I'll let you tell it in a minute. But because I met with him several times after, it's just, I don't know. It was then that I had a resignation letter ready to send in. I didn't do it. He kind of talked me down a little bit, and then my wife talked me down, and I just I'm not going to do it. But my stake president totally turned into a jerk. He kind of morphed into this thing. There was one particular meeting that I spontaneously brought my wife to the stake president, and he didn't know she was coming. And he's I don't know, it was weird. He just kind of turned on a dime, and he started challenging me a little bit, and then he turns to you and he says, "Do you see what you're doing to her? You see what you're doing to your entire family?" And do you remember that?
Oh, I remember that. Also, keep in mind, I was like 2 months pregnant at this time. We're going into town that we feel it's best for him to be released. I support my husband with his decision. And he looks at me and he said, "Well, what can I do for both of you?" I said, "Please don't let him be pushed by the wayside, not to leave us alone so we have someone to talk to, or that they don't." I said, "Because we're not asking for a financial handout. Please don't let us be pushed under the table. We still want to be involved in things. You're sitting here saying that you're going to extend a hand. You're personally going to make sure you keep in contact with him and have meetings with him."
Yeah, he promised me that he'd meet with me. He actually scheduled a meeting with the general authority with me.
Supposedly.
Well, he said he did.
And anyways, so then we fast forward. And at the time, I have a stake calling our ward. In the primary presidency, they divided out. The stake primary president had a lot on their plate years ago, and so they took individual areas. And so I was the stake activity day leader, and my job was to help the stake primary president train all the activity day leaders in the stake. I'm like, "Hey, I like this. I'll do it twice a year. Planned a thing for the girls to do." And my last activity I did with them was August, and I was due towards the end of October.
This is where you ran into the stake president?
And then after that I said, "I'm going to see this out," and I went in and made an appointment with the stake president.
This is just her, not me.
Oh, wow.
And went in and told him, I need to meet with you. And when he's like, "So what do you want to meet with me about?" And I said, "I can no longer hold a calling as someone in the stake, because that means I have to report to you. I no longer can support you because you no longer support me. You've neglected my family. You've neglected my husband. You made promises that you couldn't uphold." And he said, "Well, I'm just a man. I make mistakes." I said, "Men make mistakes, but men also realize when they've made a mistake that they make amends for them and fix it."
Yeah.
I said, "Don't you dare point out that I'm emotional wrecked because I'm pregnant. It has nothing to do with this. I am upset and no longer can officially hold a stake calling. I'm asking you to release me today." And handed him all my stuff. I said, I've had enough of men being men and men making absent promises. As a parent, we teach our children that you make a promise, you stand by it, you hold up to it because it's your countenance. That's who you are. That's what people see. And you're a liar. And I don't want to have any part of this. It reflects poorly upon me as a leader trying to train other leaders that I have to report back to a liar that can't keep his promises.
I was conflicted about all this when she came back and told me.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, thanks for going to battle for me, babe.
But was there any part of you that was like, she could technically look at you and say, "Well, you didn't keep your promises that you made in the temple." You know what I mean? So is attitude, does it extend? Did you worry about that at all?
A little bit. I don't know. You make all the promises that I made in the temple, I meant 100%, and I had no intention at the time of either backing out or welching on them or anything like that. Absolutely not. And in fact, and this is one of the statements that I've said on multiple podcasts, I don't feel like I made any decision to stop believing. I feel like the decision was made for me. I felt like this was a train that was moving down the tracks and I couldn't stop it. And before I knew it, I was in this place where I couldn't help but be there. The evidence took me here, and there's nothing I can do about it. It's not like I can put it all back in the bottle and then be just fine. Everything that I learned, all the evidence that pointed me in this certain direction led me here. It wasn't like I never once made a decision I want to stop believing in the church. I never once made that decision, ever. The only decision that I remember even contemplating, or the question that I asked myself, was, could the church not be true? Is it possible? Once I asked myself that question, then, it was pretty much downhill for me internally. That was when I woke up in the middle of the night because I wasn't sleeping. I was just staring at myself, and I just finally let myself ask that question to me personally. And I said, if it's not true, then everything makes sense. Everything. But if it is true, then look at all this crap that's on this shelf that you still have to deal with, all the mental gymnastics that you still have to do to make it all work. But if it's not true, then everything makes sense, and then peace of mind sets in.
Yep.
So, and I still feel, to this day, I feel terrible. I feel absolutely terrible that, I made promises that I've, on the surface level, looks like I've backed away from, or that I've reneged on. But I don't know. Who was it? It was somebody on the podcast that said, I feel so comfortable with the decisions or where I'm at now that if I went to the judgment bar of God, or if God really knows my heart, he's not going to hold me responsible or accountable for this, because I cared too much about my faith. That's why I had to go down the road that I did. And I have a clean conscience when it comes to where I'm at. And I don't feel like that if God looks into my heart, my soul, and if he says, you made no malicious intent to leave the church, if there is some sort of heaven, whether it's a Mormon heaven or whatever, I feel like I've done my end. If he bars me or doesn't allow me in or whatever, then that's on him. It's not my fault. I work really hard to make sure that I'm on solid footing intellectually and all that stuff. And if I feel like the church isn't holding their end of the bargain, if there's inconsistencies that don't make sense, I want to solve those things, at least for me. It's easier for me to sleep at night when I have that peace of mind for myself. And even if the consequences are devastating to not just me, but to my family, it's hard because I have too much damn integrity, I guess. I just feel like if it's not true, it's not true. That's it. Even if the consequences are bad. That's why with the stake president, the way he was, and so many people that ended friendships and relationships with me, I was like, well, I guess that's for the best. I don't know. I wanted to go back. I wanted to put it all back and do it differently, but I didn't.
Yeah.
I can't.
It's impossible.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're keeping score, there's a Tom tier.
Okay.
So was there ever a point during your journey that you actually thought about the ramifications and thought, maybe I don't want to find out more?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe I want to stop and just pretend that this doesn't exist.
I did do that.
Yeah. Probably
multiple times. I remember, just putting it all on hold. It was when I was doing apologetics and stuff like that. And it's like, I'm just going to invest fully, mentally, emotionally, intellectually into the church and its systems and all that stuff. And I just went, up to my eyeballs and in everything that was required from me at the time. I was trained in elders quorum presidencies and stuff like that, and I just kept myself full on busy for a long time. But I mean, there was already cracks that had been formed in the dam, and the shelf was starting to break at that point, and I had, whether it was intentional or unintentional, I had to go back and readdress it.
Yeah.
Because it was always like every time I would go to sleep at night and I'd close my eyes, I'm like, well, I never did. What about all these inconsistencies? What about all these problems? What about that?
For you, for me, there's a huge difference between doctrine and the gospel and the church, like the actual institution. How intertwined were those two, and are those two still really intertwined for you? Are they one and the same? How are they related? I
don't see one and the same necessarily. I do think that they're intertwined. You can't have one without the other, and so that's problematic. Like I see the church as an organization, a corporation, an entity, and
obviously with men being men, right, Kristina?
You and at the time, it was at the time. That was the big saying. Everyone said, "Men are men, and they make mistakes. Prophets are men, and they make mistakes."
Yeah,
and
I'm making mistakes. Yeah,
everybody makes a mistake. My point was, you made a promise, and making a promise isn't a mistake. You need to own it.
Yeah, you're right. But that justification, I've said this on other podcasts too, but the justification, even for church history, where you look at Joseph Smith, Brigham Young, and those guys, and they're saying, "Oh, they're men. We have to allow for them to be fallible and make mistakes." And my answer to that is to what point? Yeah, it's like, so can we allow them to be criminals and murderers? Because if that's what we're saying, that they can make mistakes into that realm, then that's something we need to discuss.
Yeah.
Because as far as I'm concerned, if you're going to be in a position where you're acting for God, I don't think it's too much to ask to not be a criminal. So
you think?
So that's kind of where I stand on that. But the basics of the gospel, like just the very, very basics, I still think are great. But it is hard to pull it away from the system that's intertwined with Mormonism.
How about you, Kristina?
About where I stand between the gospel teachings.
Is it hard for you to separate the two, or is that one of the things you do to cope with the discrepancies?
I.e. this week's announcement.
Yeah, there you go. There's a nice lead-in.
It's a policy, not a doctrine.
Okay, so these are so hard.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to think I'm a crazy person. Anyway, a lot of my life growing up, my parents taught me that I have the free choice to make decisions that I want to make. And whatever decisions I make, need to understand that there's repercussions for them. And a lot of the countries you go back and forth with my dad is that he always says that I'll be judged because of how well I taught my kids. This is, he feels all utter damnation because of where half his kids spouses have floated off to crazy nutville, according to my dad's.
Well, there's a doctrine in the Doctrine and Covenants that teaches that the parents will be responsible for their children.
Yeah.
And if they don't teach.
So that's what my dad stands by. And so if anybody in my family goes to him and says, my oldest sister's got a divorce, my dad felt horrible that was his son too, it's her ex, and that he's going to be judged for that. He feels like he's going to be judged that my baby sister doesn't go to church. He feels like he's to the extreme. And I have had
that he taught you guys, or
he just feels properly, or he could have done better, or he could have.
He feels guilt for it.
So in our family, my dad feels he's got one kid in heaven because my sister passed away 2 years ago, and she was on the right course. And anyway, so how dare people. So some things that I want to share with my dad, he always brings this up, and I said, so I was telling Tom that I want to go toe to toe with my dad over the recent policy thing, to see where he would go on if I told him some of my feelings on it that aren't jiving with what everybody's supposed to say. You don't understand it now. You're not meant to understand it. It'll all make sense down the line. I'm an advocacy for children's rights, that children should not be neglected, that children in a bad home should have a good home to be at. And essentially, I've placed myself in our ward in a place that I feel welcome and warm. I teach nursery.
Yeah, and it's like what you told me. You know, they can mess with adults all they want. You know, if they're gonna excommunicate or exclude gays, that's fine. Don't mess with the kids. That's where the line gets drawn.
So, then you guys aren't buying the explanation that they're trying to save the kids.
It's victim blaming.
The trouble of putting them in a situation in their family until they're old enough to.
Yes, because even when you look at a single mother, look at a mother that had a child out of wedlock. Look at a mother that chooses to raise their child because they were raped. What about those family circumstances aren't anything different than having a homosexual.
Yeah, well, and they're claiming that they are, because homosexuality is a more serious sin. What did they call it?
That is what they're saying.
What did they call it? Apostasy. It's apostasy, where those other things are not. But am I understanding it right? That's what they're saying,
but
right?
those same kids, I've taught kids that come from different family lifestyles all through church, where they don't have a mom. My mom and dad are divorced. My daddy died. I'm being raised by grandma. And yet you to say that that's not hard for them to say, I'm sorry, child, you can't be baptized because essentially your mom had you out of wedlock, and so you're an apostate. You're a
or if your dad came out as gay.
Or wait, your dad's incarcerated. You don't get to see. You get to see your dad behind bars. Well, you can't tell me that those aren't damaging enough for a child alone, when the one thing that they're looking forward to is maybe being baptized because it's a sense of normality for them, or refusing an infant blessings from their heavenly father or blessings from a grandparent to the child because your family is gay. But hey, mommy down the street had a kid at 18 and grandpa gets to bless him.
There's a level of hypocrisy there.
It's just hypocritical, and I don't agree with it.
How do you see it with polygamy? Because they have the same policy with polygamy.
They do.
Is that different to you guys?
Yeah. Like what if in a homosexual relationship, in the way that, from what I understand how this policy is defined, if two fathers, two mothers, or even if the child's spending some of the time with the father who's now gay and in a gay marriage, that child is now prevented to have a blessing or be baptized or whatever until they're 18, and then they have to disavow them.
No, they have to disavow the practice.
Yeah, isn't that splitting hairs though? Yeah, I think it is. The more I think about it, it's like the child's asked to disavow the practice. Well, right?
Okay, but if somebody disavows the practice of polygamy, are they disavowing their parents?
I think so, in a sense, yeah. I do.
It's a quick story on that one.
And mind you, I'm just doing this debater thing. I'm still struggling with my own opinions and feelings about this. So none of what I'm saying is a personal. It's just me being the devil's advocate.
Here's an interesting story. A side note on that: we have my cousin married a son of a polygamist father, and he converted to become LDS, and before he got baptized, he had to be interviewed by an apostle, Joseph Worthland,
and be 18, and not living, right?
And not living with his parents, yeah. Mm-hmm. But let me take this a little bit further. So he gets baptized, but then it comes time for him to go to the temple. Stake president says, "Do you associate?" Or the bishop said, "Do you associate with any groups contrary to the gospel?" And he said, "Yeah, I still see my parents." Bishop said, "No temple recommend for you."
Right.
I think the bishop was wrong. I don't think that's actual policy.
Well, it is. He's associated with someone that doesn't abide by.
It's not about association. That's not what this thing says. It says it's living with.
Well, and even if the bishop's wrong, he has the power and authority to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's one of the problems.
Because even like speaking bishops have power and authority to do stuff. My grandfather drinks Coke way back in the day because it helped settle his he had ulcers and stuff. Yeah. And so the bishop, they had a new bishop put in, the length of his bishop's reign refused for him to have a temple recommend until they had a new bishop put in.
Right.
And it was wrong because he'd always had one. And now because this new bishop said, oh, you can't have one anymore.
Right. So things like this, Kristina, what do you do? What does that do to your testimony? You're staying into the church. You know, do you table this? What do you focus on?
Well, we spent a long ranting day with my husband about it.
A very understanding ear, I'm sure. To that
he
position.
was. But the thing is that I don't agree with the position because the way it comes down and it states that you can take the spin one step further. What about those sweet, loving families that have a gay or lesbian child and they're trying to support them, yet the parents are card-holding members to go to the temple? Wouldn't they, under the same guidelines, have to disavow their children's practice so they could continue having?
I guess.
But you don't understand. But the thing is that what if their child is 14, 15, 16 years old and they've come out of the closet saying, "Mom, Dad, I'm gay." There's so many tailspins to it.
That's happened. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's hard for me to separate the two out because like I said, it always goes back to the few instances in my life that make the things that happen that make religion important to me.
Right.
That makes me think that, this is not right.
Yeah.
And those things.
Do you find it being okay with believing in the gospel and consider yourself still a good standing believing Mormon and still disagree with this policy?
Yeah, I do.
I do too. I disagree with the policy of having to get sealed in the temple first and not being able to get married civilly first. And so
that's a good one.
I don't like that policy. I think that's of men. I don't think it's not something God, and I don't think I'm wrong for thinking that. I don't think because when it comes down to it, I still believe the teachings.
Yep. We talked about there's was it in England or someplace you have to be married?
Yeah, England, Ireland.
Legally?
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to be married legally before you can be sealed.
Do that. Yeah, let's go there.
or bring that practice here.
Yeah. It should. I think it's something it should be universal everywhere.
Yeah. And my kids, one of my kids, when I told them that, and she's just young, she's like, well, then I'll wait the year. It was a no-brainer. Well, my dad's going to be at my wedding. I'm going to wait the year,
Hopefully that opinion doesn't change.
Right.
Hopefully your husband shares
is
that
okay
opinion.
with that.
Yeah, right.
So I guess my big concern with this policy, the thing that riles me up the most is when I see good believing members defending it and posting things like "follow the prophet."
Yeah.
The overarching mentality that this type of thing brings, where obedience is more important than your own conscience, that's what gets me. I mean, Tom, I'm sure are acutely aware of what happened in St. George in the 1800s because of the mentality of let's follow our leaders,
follow the prophet blindly.
So that's where I think it's a bad, pernicious doctrine, and I also have a hard time even wanting to associate with people who don't think enough for themselves to see that.
Well, and I think too, we aren't taught, and we're certainly the idea that even prophets and apostles, they can act in God's name, but they're not always acting in God's name. They are frequently acting in.
Yeah, but how as a member, a believing member, how do you know?
Right?
How can you tell?
Right? Okay, so the I guess the primary answer is the Spirit, right? And
Yeah.
for me, the thing that keeps me going, and this is just a personal thing, I'm not like advocating this for everyone, is separating doctrine. Like simply just saying, okay, the core basic beliefs, this is what I believe. All this other crap, all these appendages or whatever, and the people, the way they're presenting it or the way they're trying to run it, and I'm putting that away out of it, and I'm accepting.
Yeah.
Like that's the only way I find peace.
Well, and that makes sense. And I guess I understand what you're saying, but it also opens the door for, like the Snufferites, people that kind of go off onto their own thing, because if they start going away from correlation and what the First Presidency and the 12 say, then opening the slippery slope argument again. Well, where does it start and stop? Like if the Spirit testifies to you that polygamy is something you should be living.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Don't talk to me about that. I would love to have a sister wife, especially when my husband was traveling. I need a woman around here to talk to. Yeah. No, it's true. There's a lot of crap. I just go, well, that's not relevant to me right now in this second with my life personally. So I'm going to table that, and if and when it comes up, I'll figure it out.
No, that makes sense, and I think that's good. But for me, and I think you saw this, Neil, when I posted in one of the groups.
Yeah.
I'm a very empathetic person, and I've got a really good gay friend, and and I'm sure that this is part of the reason why there's such an outrage about the policies, because we're projecting all these future interactions and very difficult situations that are bound to happen, where kids, little freaking kids, that are 8, 9, 10 years old, are going to be told no matter how much they believe and how earnest they are.
Well, they're going to be told to wait, is how they put it, right?
They'll wait and no sounds the same when you're that age. Because for my son, for how excited he was to be baptized, I can only imagine how devastating it would have been to say, "Oh, I'm sorry, your stepdad or stepmom or whoever is gay or in a gay marriage. You're going to have to wait, and then you're going to have to, either disavow them or leave them." And that's where I'm just like, I don't have the stomach for it.
Yeah.
Well,
and
then the other thing, I think you guys were talking about this on your SmackDown, but the thought of the parent or the kid being told, well, it's your daddy's fault that you can't get baptized. I mean, they may not say it in those terms, but that's how the kid's going to take it. And so kid can either get really mad, and kid's mom can get really mad and resent the father even more, or they can get really depressed or maybe they can just accept it matter of fact.
Okay.
Well, and they can feel that they're responsible. Like, I have to wait because of my dad, so maybe I'm unworthy.
Yeah.
Or they think, oh, my dad or my mom or whoever, obviously some of that darkness or evil or whatever is now on me, or it's their fault, and it creates tension and anxiety in the family. Like, why is that even necessary? Shouldn't it just be a full-on loving, encouraging? If that child wants to be baptized and be part of the church, why would, gay or not, gay marriage or not, like, what the freak?
Because truth be told, parents will have their kids' best interest in heart.
Usually, yeah.
And so always. if all members involved want the child baptized, then they'll support. They want their child to be baptized. If the parents say, no, we want you to wait till you're 18, then that's a uniform decision that the parents are allowed to make.
Yeah.
The church.
That's where.
For them.
Okay.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be made that way.
Because I don't want to make this a debate of that, because It's like not the point of the show.
Yeah, I'm not even sure you guys are going to want all this stuff in there anyway.
It probably wouldn't be that much of a debate if we all talked about it. But anyway, so how does it affect the relationship? Like, how did this affect?
Oh, bringing it all back to the point of the podcast.
Right? I mean, it's pretty serious, and there's going to be other issues that come up like this that sicken the non-believing spouse, and in some cases, the believing spouse is taking the opposite view, and so they are at odds, and they're both sickened by the other person's view, and why can't they? Like it's so personal and so inhumane, right? I mean, don't you kind of feel that way about this? And yet your spouse is supporting that. So how do you deal with the relationship? Like, would you guys have any advice for that? I mean, obviously you're not in that situation right now with this particular policy, but have there been other times, and what have you done? Like, do you sweep it away? Like, what do? You just focus on the other stuff?
Well, I really try to know where she stands. And like we addressed earlier, she doesn't always conform with what's expected. And so when I find out where she stands on something, if I feel like I need to either challenge or push on certain things, sometimes I will. More times than not, I don't. Usually I just allow her to conform to her own opinion, to develop it however she wants. It's the same with our kids. But I'm not. I don't reserve, or I don't hold back my own opinion. I usually share it and say, this is what I think and feel, and this is how I got to this place. Take it or leave it.
Yeah.
Because I feel really, really solid and firm in a lot of my opinions, especially when it comes to church, because I've freaking done my due diligence and my homework on it. But go ahead.
Oh, so Kristina, do you do that back with him? Like, do you share your opinion and say, well, this is where I'm at, and how is it received? Like, how do you both show that respect but still disagree? And you too. I mean, obviously, Tom. Chime in.
It's come a long ways for us to get to the point where we actually hear each other's different points of views
instead of trying to convince each other.
Yeah, and we just learn to respect it, because in everything in life, there are different viewpoints, and I respect my husband's viewpoints on stuff. And in some ways, it kind of helps make you see a deeper understanding of why that viewpoint's possible, or why someone sees something that way, to make you think outside of what your own personal feelings are.
Right.
And there are some things that we don't see eye to eye on, and there are some things that we do agree on. And it's to having a difference of opinion is actually a healthy thing, because it would be really boring if we had the exact same opinions on everything.
Yeah. When we come to something where we really disagree on something, usually we do that. Well, we'll have to agree to disagree, and then we move on to something else. If we need to address it, if it's something pertinent to, our day-to-day activities or our kids, then we have to find a way through it. Other than that, if it's just something church related, it's like, are you serious? We're going to argue about this? This is dumb. And then we just shelf it, and we're like, well, if it comes up again, we'll address it. But for the time being, it doesn't affect our day-to-day, so
right.
Move on.
Okay, so if Kristina felt differently about this policy, do you think you'd be able to do that with this particular policy? To just go, well, it's not day-to-day with us, so.
I think,
Or would you lose respect for her as a person?
I don't think I would lose respect for her. I would challenge her. I would lay out as best to my ability my case, and I'd say, this is how and why I feel this way. And if she still said, well, you're still an idiot. if she said that, then I would probably, it would be a hard pill to swallow. Be like, turn around. Oh yeah, you still look good. Never mind.
No, see, the thing is that I've learned that though Tom has his different opinion, like if it was this topic about homosexuality, the church, condemning the kids, whatever, if we had two different viewpoints, Tom would lay out his aspect of this is what I believe. These are the reasons why. Here's the backup. And now you get to take the debate of the other role. What now prove to me your points of view of where it stands. And it would end up coming down to a perspective. Okay, this is how you feel. This is how you feel. But the fun part out of it is if I hear stuff later on that supports his viewpoint, I'll actually entertain him by saying, hey, I heard about this, this, and this. What do you think about these perspectives that go with your side? And he'll do the same back to me.
Yeah.
Because
I'd be really civil and not take it personally.
Yeah, because I do try to find the good things that the church does. And then I'll come home and I'll say, hey, I really enjoyed what they did here, or this talk here that I heard that was said. And I'll say, hey, kudos to them. They're still, they're still good people in there, and they're still good people that are trying to do the best they can in there. And that I'll never lose sight of that. At least I hope I don't. I still work really hard at making sure that I'm not, being completely dismissive. That's one of the reasons why I usually stand up and say, don't call the church a cult. It's one of the reasons why I still find myself being defensive to the church, because, it's got warts and major, major problems, but, they're still good in it.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, we are at like an hour and a half.
We got to wrap it up.
Jeez, you guys are long-winded. Oh, wait, no.
Sorry. We have so much good to say. We had to listen, so.
No, I think it was a good conversation.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess
so. If you can, check it out. Infant on Thrones.
Yeah, Infants on Thrones.
Infants on Thrones. There's more than one infant.
Yes. How many?
Yeah, but there's only one that matters.
We don't know.
No.
Wait, what?
There's 8 of you, right?
Yeah, there's 8 of us. There's myself, Glenn, Bob. All right, okay, test my knowledge here. Myself, Glenn, Bob, Scott, Matt, Randy, John, and Jake. Woo!
Wow.
And what about this new female, Heather? Is she going to become an infant?
You putting me on the spot. You're supposed to wait till the AMA tomorrow.
Oh.
Is she? Maybe. That's the best I can give you. Maybe.
Okay, so we'll plan on it.
she's going to be. She contributed to the sing off, the Disney song thing that's going to be coming out in the next couple days. Maybe tomorrow. I don't know. We'll see. She's really great. I don't know if you like her.
Yeah, she's good.
There's a lot of people that love her. I've never spoken to her, so I guess I'm kind of a peripheral fan.
Oh, okay.
That's as far as I can go.
Okay.
Well, you guys, thank you so much for doing this. It's been great having you on.
Well, thanks for inviting us. You guys have
for me. So,
Thank you.